吃吃吃。Shri.
Hello.
Hello.
A warm good morning to all. I welcome all to this National Workshop of Day Inauguration. We will be starting the program very soon. Our minister is on the way, and I request all the audience to be seated.
ശബ്ദം പറ ഗാംഭീര്യം നിങ്ങൾ അലറങ്ങോട്ട് എല്ലാം കൂടെ വേറെ ഇവർ രണ്ടുപേരും പിടിച്ചു വെച്ചോ
അതെന്താ പുതിയ കലാപരിപാടി?
എടാ ഇത് പശ്ചിമബംഗാളിലെ അവര് ടോക്കൺ ഓഫ് ഗ്രാറ്റിറ്റ്യൂഡാ. ടോക്കൺ ഓഫ് ലവ്. ആരാ? ഞാനിടത്തില്ല എന്തായാലും.
Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, in association with Kudumbashree, the State Poverty Eradication Mission, Government of Kerala. I would like to invite Honorable Minister LSGD, Government of Kerala, Shri M.B. Rajesh, Srimati Sharada Muralidharan, Additional Chief Secretary LSGD, Shri Rahul Kapoor, Joint Secretary and Mission Director, Day Annualam, and PM Swanidhi, Shri M. Krishnadas, Chairman, Municipal Chairman's Chamber, Dr. Madhurani Theotia, Director, Day Annualam, Srimati Shalini Pandey, Director, PM Swanidhi, Srimati Anu Kumari, Executive Director, Kudumbashree, on to the dais. We are beginning the program auspiciously by lighting the lamp. I request Honorable Minister Shri M.B. Rajesh and all the dignitaries on this dais to come forward to light the lamp. honor the distinguished guests on the dais, we are presenting them with a memento. The memento consists of a plant and a stall brought from West Bengal. Our model CDS chairpersons will be presenting the memento. The memento is being presented by our CLF chairpersons, our model CLF chairpersons. Now, I cordially invite Srimati Kumari, Executive Director, Kudumbashree, for the welcome address.
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished dignitaries from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, state mission directors, officials from states, and one and all present here. On behalf of Kudumbashree Mission, it is my privilege and honor to extend a hearty welcome to each and every one of you to this national workshop on innovative approaches towards urban poverty alleviation, organized by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs in association with Kudumbashree Kerala. NULM, it was launched in the September of 2013, and it is being implemented in all the states and union territories. It is nearing its sunset, and the discussions and deliberations on the next version or how to make it reach the next level, they are in progress. The mission has been able to make a remarkable stride in achieving the set milestones, and in Kerala, the scheme which is being implemented with Kudumbashree as the nodal agency has benefited to a significant extent. Organizing the urban poor to form grassroots level institutions and providing them with a sustainable means of livelihood, either through setting up of self-employment ventures or by creating the opportunities for wage employment, was realized through the implementation of this scheme. In addition, shelters equipped with essential services are being provided to the urban homeless, and the livelihood concerns of the urban street vendors are being addressed as well. In this Silver Jubilee year of Kudumbashree, we are greatly privileged for having got the opportunity to host this two-day national workshop. The evolution of Kudumbashree since the year of its inception in 1998 and the models adopted towards alleviating poverty through empowering women would be presented in this two-day event. Panel discussions on the various topics of significance in the area of poverty alleviation with the speakers from states and technical agencies have been planned to learn the numerous approaches and best practices at national as well as international levels. Field visits are also planned as a part of this two-day event. Let me now move to my designated role of welcoming you all to this workshop. We have been honored today with the esteemed presence of Shri M.B. Rajesh, Honorable Minister of the Local Self-Government Department, Kerala, and Chairman of the governing body of Kudumbashree. Even despite his busy schedule, Sir has always been extremely supportive and cooperative towards Kudumbashree. We extend a heartfelt welcome to you, sir. Next, I welcome Shri M. Krishnadas, Chairman of Municipal Chairman's Chamber, and also the Chairman of Guruvayur Municipality. Thank you for coming here and gracing us with your presence, sir. It is with utmost pleasure that I extend a warm welcome to Srimati Sharada Muralidharan, Additional Chief Secretary of the Local Self-Government Department. Ma'am is on the way. In fact, ma'am has just reached, so she'll be here shortly with us on the dais. Next, I move on to welcome Shri Rahul Kapoor, the Joint Secretary and Mission Director of Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana National Urban Livelihood Mission and PM Swanidhi. Your vision and interventions in guiding the team across the nation have contributed significantly towards the mission achieving its objectives. Under Sir's leadership, task force groups for various thematic areas for discussions and deliberations in the formulation of guidelines under NULM2 have been done. We have felt a positive vibrancy in the mission implementation after Sir's onboarding. We thank you, sir, for accepting our proposal and being here with us today. Next, my pleasure is to extend a warm welcome to the Director, Mrs. Madhurani IAS, Director NULM, for all the support and guidance extended in conducting this workshop, ma'am. My hearty welcome to you, ma'am. Next, I also welcome Mrs. Shalini Pandey, Director PM Swanidhi, who has always helped us to be on track with our physical and financial progress through her timely monitoring. I once again welcome Srimati Sharada Muralidharan, Additional Chief Secretary, Local Self-Government Department in Kerala, for gracing this occasion with her esteemed presence. Madam was the second Executive Director of Kudumbashree, and ma'am had a really fruitful and long tenure as the Executive Director.
Sharada Muralidharan, ACS LSGD, Government of Kerala, all the senior dignitaries on the dais, my dear friends and colleagues from all across the country. I think it has been long coming, but we are all waiting very expectantly what is going to be the future of the National Urban Livelihood Mission. Now today we are gathered here in this beautiful city in God's own country to basically not only rejuvenate but also think of how we would like to move forward with regard to this important program of the urban sector. Now the National Urban Livelihood Mission and PM Swanidhi are two of the schemes that focuses on the social aspect of urban, which under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, normally most of the missions and schemes are focusing on the urban infrastructure part of it. But here are two programs that look at the softer elements, the softer aspects on improving the lives of the people, and especially the vulnerable, and directly connecting with them. Now, of course, the mission that first started in 2013 under a different name, then was rechristened as National Urban Livelihood Mission, has its own shares of success and also has its own share of challenges. So what is it that we would like to see as we move forward, just to set that context of this 2 days workshop? I'll just make a small presentation on how do we want to look at this whole gamut of urban poverty alleviation, creation of livelihoods, and being more inclusive. So I would request the team to kindly share the presentation on the screen. Well, while we are going to be dealing with technology, I think what I would just like to start with is, yeah, thank you so much. Okay. So just to share the story of urbanization here, and as you see that when it was the year 1800, only 10% of the global population was living in cities. Things have changed drastically. We have today more than 50% of the population living in urban areas. as you can see the global urbanization trends, how we have moved from 1980s onwards to today, when we are more than 55% urban in the world. But when you look at India, the story is like this, that we had primarily been agrarian or rural post-independence. Most of the population was living in rural areas. And of course, there are things with regard to the way we define urbanization in this country and how there is no common definition across the globe. So there will always be debates, but then it also has its own set of perils and challenges that we need to address, urban poverty being one of them. So if you look at some of these numbers, the total urban population is close to 48.68 crores in the country at present. And yes, we have made some improvements, some strides in alleviation of poverty, with the multidimensional poverty coming down to close to 16% by 2022. So what this, so of course it is inevitable. I think this is the century of urbanization. We see more of migration happening from the rural to the urban areas. And why does it happen? Why would somebody want to come to city centers? I think it's the whole agglomeration economies that bring people to the cities. The whole demand, the whole supply linkages, the kind of the scale that you are able to get. So if you just take an example, if you would like to set up a venture or some kind of a restaurant there in a small rural area, probably you wouldn't have those kind of markets, those kind of supply chains available, the sourcing of material, etc., which the urban area is able to provide, the urban agglomerations are able to provide. So they create livelihoods. There's more potential for employment. So despite the living conditions that are quite adverse in urban areas, this migration is a constant phenomena, and there's more of rural to urban migration that is going to happen in the future. The kind of educational opportunities that help us improve our lives, this is something that attracts people to come to cities. How it leads to better healthcare and better public service. So I think what we need to see that along with these challenges, when people come to cities, if you do not plan your urbanization properly, if you do not have a strategy on how you would like to urbanize, I think it will lead to a lot of challenges, a lot of perils. It will lead to lack of civic amenities, which we see in many of the poor neighborhoods in the cities. The kind of living conditions that we have with regard to sanitation, the water management, the hygiene, health, education, the whole civic infrastructure is put under tremendous pressure because of the increased population pressure that happens, and if it is not planned. The livelihood challenges, the ability to create meaningful employment, if those opportunities are not forthcoming, so it would lead to more adverse impact on the urban poor. And effectively, what it would lead to is it would lead to a low quality of life, which is not something which is very desirable, because overall it has an effect on the overall economy, the overall society. And then when I was talking about how we would like to define urban, and just to say that as per our definition, wherein we define urban as an area with more than 5,000 population, where a certain percentage of people, male population is working in non-agriculture related activities, and the density factor of 400 people per square kilometer. Now with that kind of definition, we were 31% urban in the year 2011 as per the census. But if you decide to change the definition, and if you see the global definitions of urbanization, so it ranges. So wherein we have adopted 5,000 as the population characteristic, there are countries that have gone down to 2,000 or 2,500, some are even higher. So there are different definitions. So because of this lack of common definition, what is happening is that the percentage of urban is very, very different. So maybe we may be 34% on date, but if we adopt the definition that probably Mexico or maybe China is adopting, we might be maybe 50 or 60% urban. So these are just some of the cases wherein you have different population percentages, different definitions and different urban population percentages. This is very important because this is how you will decide whether you want to focus in the urban areas or not. And if you see the trend of funding that had been coming to the urban areas, I think this trend started showing a change somewhere close to around the last decade or so, or the last couple of decades, wherein some of the slew of urban missions were announced by the government of India. The states also started focusing more on the urban centers. So I think it would be a reflection of the change in trend, but still, when we look at a comparison of rural to urban, there's still a wide gap of the amount of investment. So what I would say is we are probably reluctant urbanists. So by not defining urbanism, us as urban, what would it lead to? It would lead to maybe the developmental regulations that we would want in a planned city not being adopted. It would lead to issues like when you talk about higher crime rates due to the congestions or the problems of ghettoization that happens, the environmental concerns that are associated with it, the displacement of communities, the social impact it would have, the loss of social cohesion, the cost of living which goes up because everything is a scarce resource if it's not planned properly. Cities becoming more unplanned, leading to more congestion, more lack of civic amenities, and how your cultural preservation also gets affected. I think these are all the perils just because we are reluctant to declare ourselves as urban. And this is probably something we need to discuss on. Is it going to require a relook on how we define ourselves as urban or not? And to address all these challenges, the National Urban Livelihood Mission was initiated, and what we see is some of the numbers on what this mission has achieved. Of course, we have made progress when you look at the various components like social mobilization and institutional development. Close to 8.3 lakh self-help groups have been created across the country, affecting or mobilizing nearly 84 lakh women. Skill development, nearly 14 lakh people were skill trained under this mission, and employment opportunities were created for more than 7 lakh people who were placed. 14 lakh people, microfinance was extended, and subsidized credit was extended close to 37,000 crore rupees. Number of shelters were created for the urban homeless. Today we have more than 1,800 shelters that are operational, and nearly 700 shelters that are still going to be created. And the support that we have provided to urban street vendors by way of improvements in the number of certificate of vendings that have been issued, or the vending zones that have been created, the vending markets that have been developed, and further leveraging by creation of the PM Swanidhi scheme. So somewhere the numbers look good, but if you just look at the comparisons, when you look at the rural mission, and it's something that we need to accept, that the amount of investment over the last, since 2014 to 2023 in rural has been close to 65,000 crores in the rural mission. But in the urban mission, we have not been able to spend more than 5,300 crores. So I think there's still a lot of scope of improvement. So what is it that is required? And as we move forward, as we come to a closure of NULM 1.0, and as we think of the way this mission needs to be redesigned, restructured, or the way we look at urban poverty alleviation, probably we would like to look at things from a newer lens. By a new lens, I would say that we need to have a more of an ecosystem approach towards poverty alleviation. And the way we look at things, we need to see the building blocks and how the government's role, instead of just being the sole implementer, it has to be more of an enabler, the builder of a platform that allows all the various stakeholders, be it the government, the industry, the civil society, the academia, we call it the quadruple helix, coming together, working on this ecosystem development by not only focusing on individuals, but also moving towards promotion of entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship development would be a plan, how we look at households, how we look at the issue of shelters or the affordable housing that we are looking at, how we can draw convergence with those schemes. I think there's a gap between that. We were having a discussion just a couple of days back. How do we need to create more channels of communication so that the various silos that are operating today in this urban space of poverty alleviation, those barriers are broken down. How we develop more kind of incubation and training facilities, the acceleration facilities that help people become more entrepreneurial. How we need to move from skilling to entrepreneurship development. Yes, the first phase, there was a lot of focus on skilling programs. They are still important. There are a lot of ministries in the central government that are focusing on specific programs like PMKK, etc. But as NULM, we probably need to think of creating an entrepreneurship development ecosystem. So this is an area that we need to think on, and I would request that over the couple of days, while we are doing this discussion in this place, we need to think of what can we do to promote entrepreneurship amongst our SHGs. sensitivity to different needs. So maybe the classification of urban poor as one category would require a relook. It would require probably looking at it from a different lens, wherein the degree of challenges that an urban poor would face, the overall larger set of urban poor, wherein there are subsets of a person who's a woman would have a higher degree of vulnerability. And if that person is a child, and if it's a girl child, then the degree of vulnerability would just increase. A person who's an elderly would probably have even a higher level of vulnerability, and a person with disability who's a woman, who's a poor. Now, therein, you need to probably have a different kind of a strategy or a different kind of approach to address all these vulnerabilities of the various segments, be it the transgenders, be it the destitutes, the construction workers. So I guess when we go forward, we probably will have to have different kind of approaches to addressing all these needs of the various interest groups. And if you see the kind of demographic dividend that India is enjoying today with a very high population of young, so what we need to do is have a holistic approach, wherein starting with skill training and development, you move up towards financial assistance, provide reasonable accommodation and dignity on jobs, and finally that will lead to improvement in the quality of life. So probably the building blocks start from here when you look at the vulnerability in the country. Need to have a collaborative approach, and how as a government, if we try to do everything on our own, probably therein we face our own challenges, our own constraints, and through collaboration with the industry, which is the next step, what we call as maybe a public-private partnership model, and then you try to scale it up by basically converging with the civil society, the NGOs who are working on ground, with the citizenry, and basically taking it a step forward, and the entire the quadruple helix collaborating together to address these challenges from the industry, the knowledge partners, the academia, the civil society, the government, all coming together, joining hands. So those kind of networks and alliances will have to be built. There are organizations that are willing to work in this space, but I feel that many other people are working in silos, and I think if we have that collaborative power coming together, I think that would create a much larger impact. How we need to leverage technology, and technology has been very, very successful in the other scheme that we are running, the PM Swanidhi, and I think that the Nobel laureates, Mr. Banerjee and Esther Duflo, they said that it's identification of beneficiaries which is the biggest challenge when you are talking about poverty alleviation programs. Somewhere the PM Swanidhi scheme has been able to tackle that, and that's why the reason for its success is because you have the data available on our target group, what kind of benefits can be extended to them. And I think the similar kind of approach will have to be there as we move forward in NULM. How do we build a technology platform that looks at the beneficiaries, the overall stakeholders in the ecosystem, what all convergences can be brought about, what all deep insights can technology provide that help us target our beneficiaries better, provide them better services, and also monitor and evaluate them. So be it using the emerging technologies like AI and machine learning, or how we basically build strong, robust databases of the urban poor. This is an area that NULM as a mission will need to function on. This is probably one of the areas where we have not been very strong, but I guess as we go forward, I think the next couple of days of discussion should focus on this as well. The supporting infrastructure. So when we target our beneficiaries, we talk about how we can provide them financial inclusion through microfinance support, we can provide them skilling and training, but what about the support infrastructure? What about the built infrastructure that is surrounding them? So when you're talking about maybe a street vendor who's given a loan under PM Swanidhi, but this vending area that he's working on, and the moment there's a change in weather, there's rain, and then he has to pack up his wares and lose his livelihood for the day. So is there a support infrastructure that can be created by development of better vending zones or vending markets? Is there a support infrastructure when it comes to women? The kind of care ecosystem we need to provide. Many of the women are not able to basically earn their livelihoods because they have to take care of their children, the elderly. But what if the workplace is able to provide that kind of a care ecosystem? This is an area where we need to focus on as a mission. So what kind of civic infrastructure, the water and healthcare, the hygiene issues, the sanitation issues, all these support infrastructure which is not directly done by us, but can be provided if we decide to converge with the other programs of the government from the at the national level, be it Amrit or Swachh Bharat Mission. So those are things that we can probably look at when we talk about convergence. And where do we see ourselves? I think the whole ecosystem approach towards urban poverty alleviation, wherein we leverage technology, we build safety nets around the poor, we promote enterprise development through entrepreneurship development, we collaborate more, and we enhance the livelihoods of the urban poor. I think with that, I close my address, and I look forward to 2 days of wonderful discussion here with all of you who have come from across the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your presentation. Now, let me invite Srimati Sharda Muralidharan, Additional Chief Secretary, LSGD, to address the gathering.
Thank you. Welcome all to Kerala. Since I will be speaking at length later, I do not intend to say much right now. But just to say, I perhaps am the oldest person here with knowledge of what's been happening in this sector of NRLM, because I was the executive director of Kudumbashree when the NRLM concept paper was shared. The NULM came after that. So NULM took its ideas from a little bit from NRLM, but at that point of time, the NRLM and NUNLM were going in two different directions, because while NRLM took lessons from the SGSY program, NULM took it from the SJSRY program. And these programs had quite a bit of commonality, but a lot of difference. Unfortunately, though, the understanding of the urban did not really figure much in the way we work things. It was about communities and participation, and trying to understand that. The Kudumbashree itself was struggling at that point to figure out how the urban was distinct from the rural. We had a one-size-fits-all approach as far as our community-based organization was concerned. And we knew that it was just not working in the urban spaces the way it was working in rural. So understanding what that distinction was, we actually went hammer and tongs into our own bylaws and constitutions, broke them down, figured out what we could bring from, what we could retain in the urban, what we should take out from the rural when we were looking at urban engagements. You could also see that there was the nature of the entrepreneurship that was supported was quite different. The tendency to go in for a high service sector intervention was bigger. And also the relationship between the community-based organization and the local government. Because the local government, the urban local governments are actually much more powerful than the rural. So the community space is not something which is had. It can become very dependent and also very marginalized community space, particularly if you're talking about a community space of disempowered women coming together. So that's not really an easy place to come into. But we've had quite a few interesting experiences and lessons. We've had a few interesting experiences and lessons going along the way, which I will be sharing with the presentation. But this context, which the presentation Rahul just made, with regard to where we are and where we need to be, and I would now speak not as the former ED of Kudumbashree, but as the Additional Chief Secretary of Local Self-Government Department, which is grappling with entirely this, not just in the context of livelihoods for the poor, but we're moving into this understanding of, especially from the lessons of COVID. When COVID broke us down, we realized that we were far more resilient than we gave ourselves credit for. We came back with a bang. The network and the very fact that this microfinance institutions and capability was very strong with the network, actually made it very easy to look at reaching out to the very vulnerable among the poor. It gave us the expectation that maybe we could even look at targeting to eradicate absolute poverty from the state. Because multidimensional poverty in the state of Kerala is right now less than 1%, 0.71% to be exact. And so it means that the state has just a small contingent of the very poor, extreme poor, that we would need to tackle. And we had a presentation earlier, a month back, by Abhijit Banerjee, the Nobel laureate. And he was talking about how perhaps, you might need to targeting and aiming at perfection in targeting might perhaps be counterproductive when you're looking at programs for the poor. That universalization and engagement will perhaps help ensure that if everybody is able to access entitlements and entitlements that are available, then you won't fight for them and you won't suppress and you won't, other the person who is weaker than you. That has been a lesson in Kerala's understanding as well. That it has been, Kudumbashree also took a very difficult step at a point in time, which was to say that we're not going to be targeting just the poor. We're going to be targeting anybody. We're not going to target per se. It's going to be just like the MJNREJs was, it was going to be demand driven. Anybody who wants to come into Kudumbashree, who feels the need to come into Kudumbashree is welcome. And then it was about, within that, when you did that, how would you encourage? So people already have the space and they occupy that space, and it is a norm that the better privileged are the ones who get into leadership positions. But over time, we also learned how it would be possible to get the more vulnerable voices, the more marginalized voices, also to get into leadership, and for the privileged among the poor themselves to vouch for them and to work for them. So these are all some very interesting lessons that we've had, and it would be interesting to see how this goes forward. We are right now also grappling with the idea of total digital literacy. And we see that as a poverty eradication intervention. Because in the world, when everything is online, when everything is digital, when services are digital, then the poor need to be able to go digital to be able to access them. And a state which has complete internet coverage and Wi-Fi availability, therefore can use digital literacy also as a tool that will be moving, that be pushing towards eradication of poverty and using digital means of doing it, which would be an interesting take, because then it also suddenly opens out opportunities for interesting new state-of-the-art occupations for the poor whom we would not have thought of before. So I'll just stop here and also say that there was just one more thing perhaps, I cannot not say it, which is about climate resilience and sustainability. We are right now at a cusp in the world where the window is closing rapidly. And becoming resilient, becoming agile community is extremely important. And that goes for urban communities as well, particularly given the fact that you'll be having so much of influx coming in. You will have cities which swell because of populations moving in, but you will also have small towns and villages which boom because, again, that they themselves develop and become urban in character. So it's not just about incoming populations that are going to urbanize us, it's just that the nature of the beast is such that we are going to be urbanizing whether we like it or not. And in the urban context, in the challenges of becoming climate resilient are so much higher. We already have, you are right next to the city of Kochi, where we already have had climate refugees, where parts of villages, the outlying areas of Kochi are being taken away by the sea, by rising waters. Kochi is at risk of going under 2 feet of seawater by 2050. So a lot to think on in terms of how you can make communities, urban communities, and particularly urban poor communities, resilient in the wake of the challenges that are going to be facing us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now it is time to present the Spark Awards. We are going to present the Spark Awards for the year 22-23 and 21-22. I humbly request the Honorable Minister to present award to the winners. Spark Awards for the year 22-23 for the best performing state goes to Gujarat. I request Gujarat team to come onto the stage to receive the award. Award for the second best performing state goes to Kerala. Award for the third performing state goes to Uttarakhand. In the category of Northeast region and Himalayan states, award for the best performing state goes to Mizoram. Award for the second best performing state goes to Himachal Pradesh. Award for the third performing state goes to Tripura. Next, we are giving away the Spark Awards for the year 21-22. The award for the best performing state goes to Andhra Pradesh. Award for the second performing state goes to Kerala. Award for the third performing state goes to Tamil Nadu. In the category of Northeast region and Himalayan states, best performing award goes to Mizoram. Mizoram. Award for the second best performing state goes to Himachal Pradesh. Award for the third performing state goes to Uttarakhand. I request all the award winners to come to the stage for a photo session with the distinguished guests. Requesting all the award winners to come on to the stage for a group photo. Next program is the release of compendium of 50 case studies of urban micro enterprises. Compendium contains the stories of individuals who have established a successful micro enterprises, breaking free from the cycle of poverty. All dignitaries on the dais are requested to reveal the cover of the copies of compendium. Next in line is the launch of U-Learn 2.0. U-Learn is an urban livelihood e-learning and resource network. It is an e-learning tool designed to build and enhance the skills of day Ernakulam functionaries. U-Learn is accessible through mobile applications and web-based platforms.
Capacity of thousands of outreach workers and the millions of self-help group members across 4,000 cities. How do we provide them with a learning tool which they can easily access? The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs for the National Urban Livelihoods Mission launched U-Learn as an e-learning platform which has tutorials, government advisories and case studies. These drama-based tutorials tell the story of an urban poor settlement with relatable women like Ramila, Sushila and Gul. They discover the strength of coming together as a SHG, overcome their personal challenges and resolve issues of their settlement.
लाल बिंदु है उन घरों में पानी का कनेक्शन नहीं.
Come join the urban SHG movement. Download the U-Learn app.
Next, we are screening a short film on Day Ernakulam. Let us watch the short film now.
Is a vibrant, fast-developing country. It is in this direction that the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India, has been implementing the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Urban Livelihoods Mission. Day NULM addresses multiple dimensions of urban poverty through 5 main components: social mobilization and institution development, employment through skill training and placement, self-employment program, support to urban street vendors, and shelter for urban homeless. The urban poor households have been mobilized into a 3-tiered structure with self-help groups at the grassroots level, area-level federations at the slum or ward level, and city-level federations at the city level. The SHGs are adhering to the Panchasutra.
डे एर्नाकुलम मिशन जो आया है ना, हमको बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला है. हम लोगों को एक प्लेटफॉर्म मिला है डे एर्नाकुलम आने से, सपोर्ट मिला है हम लोगों को. अभी हम लोगों को CLC भी मिला है. हम जो प्रोडक्ट निकालती है ना, वो कहाँ बेचूं? CLC आने से हम लोग बहुत खुश है.
डे एर्नाकुलम से मुझे फ़ोन आया कि तुम्हारा सिलेक्शन हो गया है, तुम ट्रेनिंग कर सकते हो. 3 महीने मैंने ट्रेनिंग किया वहाँ पर. मेरा लाइफ चेंज हो गया कोर्स करने के बाद. ये जॉब अब जो कर रहा हूँ, सेंट्रल से लेकर पहले 3 या 5 महीने के बाद ही मैंने एक गाड़ी खरीद ली, स्कूटी एक खरीद ली।
Access to affordable credit under the self-employment program component is one of the key ways to promote micro-entrepreneurship amongst the urban poor. Bank loans at 7% rate of interest are available for individuals, groups and self-help group enterprises. The self-employment program is focused on financial assistance in the form of interest subvention to individuals or groups of urban poor for setting up gainful self-employment micro-enterprises.
हम लोग के बचत गट की महिला को कुछ काम नहीं था, इसके लिए हम लोग ने बैंक से 2.5 लाख का लोन मिला। उससे हम लोग औरत लोग सब लोग मिलके साड़ी बेचते हैं, ब्लाउज सीते हैं, ड्रेस सीते हैं। महीने का 30 या 40 हज़ार से होता है।
A portal for affordable credit and interest subvention access has been developed to facilitate real-time processing, payment, monitoring and tracking of interest subvention to beneficiaries on monthly DBT mode basis.
The National Urban Livelihood Mission has been key in defining India's urban transformation journey. It has reduced the vulnerability of the urban poor. It has made our cities more and more inclusive. And also, it has created opportunities for gainful employment and self-employment for the vulnerable section. The mission has been transformative. And as we are going forward, what we want this mission to do is move from skilling to entrepreneurship development, promote gender equality, and also make it a more inclusive mission for transformation of our urban cities.
The mission is addressing the concerns of urban street vendors by identifying and facilitating access to suitable spaces for vending, institutional credit, improving skill and social security linkage.
पहले मैं बेरोजगार था। इस स्कीम के बारे में जब मुझे पता चला तो मैंने टेंडर अप्लाई किया और इससे हमें अच्छा खासा रोजगार मिला और हमारे साथ 4-5 लड़के और हैं, उनको भी अच्छा रोजगार मिल रहा है।
With the aim of providing a safe roof to every urban homeless, the scheme of shelter for urban homeless provides permanent all-weather 24/7 shelters with essential services for the urban poor.
My relatives just took away all my belongings and my house and all, so they put me on the road. So since 2 years I was on Virat station. So Eva madam brought me here. She gave me shelter and all, food and all.
The numbers tell the story of the lives touched, lives improved. Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Urban Livelihoods Mission, has made tremendous inroads in reaching out to the urban poor and will continue its efforts to bring smiles to the faces of lakhs of beneficiaries by transforming their lives.
Let us move on to the keynote address. I humbly request the Honorable Minister, Shri M.B. Rajesh, to deliver the keynote address.
Dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, and dear friends. At the outset, on behalf of Government of Kerala, let me welcome you all once again to our state. I hope you will certainly enjoy your stay in Kerala. I also hope that before you leave, you will get an opportunity to experience our monsoon. We are expecting monsoon soon. I'm very glad to see that the entire team of Day NULM is gathered here to learn and share the best practices adopted by various states in implementing this scheme and to replicate success models. This workshop is being held at an important juncture because NULM is going to move on to its next phase. A new version of NULM 2 is going to be launched soon. So I hope that this workshop will give direction in moving ahead to the next phase of NULM. This workshop is being organized by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and Kudumbashree, the State Poverty Eradication Mission of Government of Kerala. In Kerala, NULM is implemented by Kudumbashree since May 2015. Kudumbashree, as a state poverty eradication mission, is the largest women community network encompassing 46 lakhs of women in the entire state. Kudumbashree has been working in this field of poverty eradication for the last 25 years. And the approach of Kudumbashree in poverty eradication is fundamentally different. Kudumbashree is not just looking at this issue of poverty eradication, not just from the angle of providing basic necessary requirements, meeting basic necessary requirements, but Kudumbashree is looking at to this issue from the angle of rights, ensuring basic rights and empowering women. The guiding principle of Kudumbashree is reaching out to the family through women and reaching out to the community through the family. So this is the guiding principle of Kudumbashree. In Kerala, Day NULM has been able to reach out to a significant section of urban poor. So as I said, this is not just addressing the issue of denial or lack of basic requirements, but ensuring basic rights such as freedom of expression, participation in decision-making process, etc., etc. 25 years of Kudumbashree has been celebrated recently. Honorable President of India attended one of our functions. And the experience of Kudumbashree in the last 25 years in poverty eradication is very rich and vast. Kudumbashree has been working with local self-government institutions, and Kudumbashree has played an important role in the development of Kerala. The last 25 years has witnessed empowerment of women in all three spheres: economic, social, and political. Undoubtedly, we can divide the history of modern Kerala as before Kudumbashree and after Kudumbashree. Kudumbashree has brought about an important and fundamental transformation in the society of Kerala. Kudumbashree has a dialectical relationship with this transformation, because Kudumbashree itself was made possible only because of the socio-economic and political conditions prevailing in the state, and Kudumbashree has been instrumental in bringing about the socio-economic and political transformation in the society. So it's a dialectical relationship between the Kerala society and Kudumbashree. In the last 25 years, Kudumbashree has gathered immense expertise in implementing schemes of both state and central governments. Along with this, Kudumbashree's strong community-based and democratic organizational structure has helped successful implementation of NULM. With all these support systems, along with the strong convergence between LSGIs and community-based organizations, the state has maintained a consistency in the performance of implementing NULM. We just saw Kerala has bagged second position in performance for the last 2 consecutive years. So this performance, and according to what I learned, is that according to Spark ranking parameters, Kerala has been maintaining a very good performance for the last 6 years. So this was made possible mainly by the involvement of Kudumbashree. When we talk about urbanization, as Rahul Kapoor, the Joint Secretary, just explained, the process of urbanization in the country is slightly, or the process of urbanization in the state is slightly different from the process of urbanization taking place in Kerala. In Kerala, we are witnessing a faster growth of urbanization and a faster growth of urban population. But this is not due to migration of people from rural areas to cities. In Kerala, we are expecting that by 2035, 95% of our population will be urban population. And this is because cities are spreading across the state. Kerala as a whole is becoming a city. So that difference is there. The difference of urbanization between the scenario of urbanization is different between the national scene and Kerala. So there is very thin urban-rural divide in our state. So this has helped Kudumbashree in devising universal policies aimed at poverty eradication. The government mandates an allocation of 2% of the LSGI's own funds for poverty eradication. How the government is supporting poverty eradication measures, how the government is supporting Kudumbashree. It mandates LSGIs to earmark 2% of its own funds. The 73 and 74 constitutional amendments, along with the People's Plan launched in Kerala in the year of 1996, helped or it ensured that almost 1/3 of the state's annual budget is allocated to LSGIs. Further, LSGIs earmark 5% of their funds for women component plan and 20% of their funds for housing to deprived sections. Government support to Kudumbashree has been very instrumental in gaining sustainable means of livelihood. One of the recent examples is government order for mandatory collection of user fees for Haritha Karma Sena, a subsidiary of Kudumbashree engaged in waste management. So the result of all these initiatives by Kudumbashree with the active support of the government is huge transformation of our society. According to multi-dimensional poverty index of Niti Aayog, Kerala has been ranked as a state which has the lowest poverty ratio. Just 0.71% of our population is below the poverty line, according to Niti Aayog. So this was made possible mainly by the activities of Kudumbashree. And you can imagine the role of Kudumbashree by learning the fact that a huge amount to the tune of rupees 8,600 crores is circulating with the women. So this is the role played by Kudumbashree in transforming the Kerala society. Now, we are moving to the next phase of poverty eradication, a historical next phase of poverty eradication. We are implementing extreme poverty eradication program in our state. And Kudumbashree has an instrumental role in this program also. Kudumbashree was entrusted with the task of survey to identify extremely poor families. And Kudumbashree did a commendable job and identified 64,006 families as extremely poor families. And LSGIs prepared micro plans for each and every families identified as extremely poor families. That means 64,006 micro plans were prepared by LSDIs to lift them out of poverty. And the first phase of extreme poverty eradication is over. And our objective is to achieve the target of total extreme poverty eradication by November 1st, 2025. Kudumbashree has an important role to play in this extreme poverty eradication program also. Kudumbashree has been working as National Resource Organization of Ministry of Rural Development for the last several years. And now Kudumbashree is providing technical and implementation assistance to 25 states and 1 union territories. This shows Kudumbashree's immense expertise in implementing poverty eradication schemes and various other schemes of central and state governments. I am thankful to Ministry of Housing and Urban Development for accepting our proposal to hold this workshop here in Kerala. And I hope that this workshop will give a proper direction and a new inspiration when we are going ahead with the NULM 2. And once again, I wish you all a pleasant stay in Kerala. With these words, I conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With this, we have come to the conclusion of the inaugural session. I would like to thank all the dignitaries on and off the dais for gracing the occasion. Now, we are presenting a live musical choreograph on stage depicting the saga of Kudumbashree, performed by Kudumbashree family members. I request all the dignitaries on the dais to take a seat in the front row. Lyrics of this musical choreograph is by Shri Karivallu Murali and it is sung by Srimati Pushpavali. Let us start the program. The musical choreograph.
എന്നും പാതിര നേരം വരെയും എണ്ണിത്തീരാ പണി മാത്രം. എന്നും പാതിര നേരം വരെയും എണ്ണിത്തീരാ പണി മാത്രം. എന്നിട്ടും പണിയൊന്നും ഇല്ലെന്നെന്നും പറയും പതിവായി. എന്നിട്ടും പണിയൊന്നും ഇല്ലെന്നെന്നും പറയും പതിവായി. ഒന്നും കയ്യിലെടുക്കാനില്ല ജന്മം പെണ്ണിന് ദാരിദ്ര്യം. ഒന്നും കയ്യിലെടുക്കാനില്ല ജന്മം പെണ്ണിന് ദാരിദ്ര്യം. ജന്മം പെണ്ണിന് ദാരിദ്ര്യം. ജന്മം പെണ്ണിന് ദാരിദ്ര്യം. കാൽനൂറ്റാണ്ടു പരന്നു പടർന്നു കുതിക്കുകയാണ് കുടുംബശ്രീ. ആകാശം ഇനി അതിരുകളെന്ന് തിരിച്ചറിയുന്നു നാം ഒന്നായി. തിരിച്ചറിയുന്നു നാം ഒന്നായി. ആലപ്പുഴയിൽ നിന്നു തുടങ്ങിയതാണീ സ്ത്രീ ശാക്തീകരണം. നാടും നഗരവും എന്നില്ലാതെ വളർന്നു തുടങ്ങി അയൽക്കൂട്ടം. ആലപ്പുഴയിൽ നിന്നു തുടങ്ങിയതാണീ സ്ത്രീ ശാക്തീകരണം. നാടും നഗരവും എന്നില്ലാതെ വളർന്നു തുടങ്ങി അയൽക്കൂട്ടം. സാമൂഹികവും സാമ്പത്തികവും ഇരച്ചുയരുന്നൊരു മുന്നേറ്റം. സാമൂഹികവും സാമ്പത്തികവും ഇരച്ചുയരുന്നൊരു മുന്നേറ്റം. ലോകത്തിനിതു മാതൃകയായി കേരളം എന്നതൊരുത്തരമായി. ലോകത്തിനിതു മാതൃകയായി കേരളം എന്നതൊരുത്തരമായി. ഭരണത്തിൽ പകുതി സ്ത്രീകൾ തന്നുടെ നേതൃത്വം. പ്രാദേശിക ഭരണത്തിൽ പകുതി സ്ത്രീകൾ തന്നുടെ നേതൃത്വം. നാട്ടിൻ വികസന മേഖല മുഴുവൻ സ്ത്രീകൾ തന്നുടെ സാന്നിധ്യം. നാട്ടിൻ വികസന മേഖല മുഴുവൻ സ്ത്രീകൾ തന്നുടെ സാന്നിധ്യം. മെട്രോ തൊട്ടു തുടങ്ങുകയാണ്, എയർപോർട്ടുകൾ വരെ നീളുന്നു. മെട്രോ തൊട്ടു തുടങ്ങുകയാണ്, എയർപോർട്ടുകൾ വരെ നീളുന്നു. നഗരം ഗ്രാമം ശുചിത്വം ഇന്ന് കുടുംബശ്രീ തൻ കരങ്ങളിൽ. നഗരം ഗ്രാമം ശുചിത്വം ഇന്ന് കുടുംബശ്രീ തൻ കരങ്ങളിൽ. കുടുംബശ്രീ തൻ കരങ്ങളിൽ. കാൽനൂറ്റാണ്ടു പഴന്നു വളർന്നു കുതിക്കുകയാണ് കുടുംബശ്രീ. ആകാശം ഇനി അതിരുകളെന്ന് തിരിച്ചറിയുന്നു നാം ഒന്നായി. തിരിച്ചറിയുന്നു നാം ഒന്നായി. പെണ്ണിന് പിൻബുദ്ധി എന്നോദിയ ചങ്ങാതികൾ ഇന്നെവിടെ പോയി? പെണ്ണിന് പിൻബുദ്ധി എന്നോദിയ ചങ്ങാതികൾ ഇന്നെവിടെ പോയി? പെണ്ണിനൊന്നും കഴിയില്ലെന്ന് മുടിഞ്ഞവരെല്ലാം എവിടെ പോയി? പെണ്ണിനൊന്നും കഴിയില്ലെന്ന് മുടിഞ്ഞവരെല്ലാം എവിടെ പോയി? നാടിൻ പ്രതീക്ഷ, നാടിൻ കരുത്ത്, നാടിൻ നാളെ കുടുംബശ്രീ. നാടിൻ പ്രതീക്ഷ, നാടിൻ കരുത്ത്, നാടിൻ നാളെ കുടുംബശ്രീ. കുതിച്ച ദൂരം അറിഞ്ഞു പോലും മടക്കമില്ല കുടുംബശ്രീ. കുതിച്ച ദൂരം അറിഞ്ഞു പോലും മടക്കമില്ല കുടുംബശ്രീ. മടക്കമില്ല കുടുംബശ്രീ. മടക്കമില്ല കുടുംബശ്രീ. മടക്കമില്ല കുടുംബശ്രീ.
Thank you, team, for your dazzling performance. Now, let us take a short break for high tea. We have arranged theme stalls and product stalls on either side of the entrance. All those who are interested to purchase SAG products can do so from the stalls arranged over there.
check, check. Hello, hello, check, check. Hello, hello. Check, check.
അതല്ലെങ്കിൽ അടിക്കൂലേ?
Hello, test. Hello.
All are requested to be seated. We'll be starting the session shortly.
No.
All are requested to be seated. We'll be starting the session shortly. All are requested to assemble. We'll be starting the session shortly. Requesting once again all of you to please assemble. We'll be starting the session shortly. We are already running short of time. We need to start the presentations immediately. So all are requested to assemble at the earliest.
Kind attention to all. All are requested to be back as soon as possible. We are running short of time. Once again, I request all to enter this hall and be seated.
Welcome back. Before moving on to the presentations, we have Mentimeter, which is a live voting mechanism to interact with the audience. So we will start with the Mentimeter. All are requested to log in either through the QR code or the link provided on the screen. So the link for logging in to the Mentimeter is on the screen. Either you can use the QR code or you can log in through the link. Question will be displayed once all of you have finished logging in. Hope all of you have logged in. Now the question will be displayed. So the question is, what did you like the most in the high tea? And the options are tea, coffee, medu vada and chutney, and cookies. So you can cast your votes now. Start casting your votes. Hope all of you have logged in. See, those who are not able to log in using the QR code, you can join at menti.com and the code is displayed. It is 17288453. And one more announcement. Various QR codes are displayed in different parts of the canteen and various other parts. So you can scan those codes and you can see various activities of Kudumbashree that you can do in between. So before moving on to the next session, now our results are out. So medu vada and chutney is the most preferred item for high tea. So a big round of applause for medu vada. So, and we can have, we'll be having this sort of questions in between. And also you can let us know whenever you prefer to have such questions. So thank you all. Now we are moving on to the presentation part. I would like to request Sharda Muralidharan Madam, Additional Chief Secretary, Local Self-Government, Government of Kerala, to deliver a presentation on 25 years of Kudumbashree in women empowerment.
Okay, so I had warned you before that I would have a fairly long session which will talk about Kudumbashree, what we've... Am I audible now? Better? Thank you. Yeah, so the tendency to keep it low is so that it doesn't obstruct my view. Chalo. So 25 years of Kudumbashree. I have been a fellow traveler for most all of it. Because in 1998, when Kudumbashree started, I was district collector at that point of time. And so Kudumbashrees, SHGs coming into the People's Plan campaign of Kerala, integrating that with Kudumbashree was something which was big on our agenda. After that, I became Commissioner of Rural Development, and as Commissioner of Rural Development too, we had this interface of SGSY with Kudumbashree. And that continued, of course. And then I moved on to, with Kudumbashree 6 years, and after that, in the National Rural Livelihood Mission as Chief Operating Officer. And from there, I mean, I wouldn't let go of SHGs, unfortunately, for SHGs. I also, as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, when we were initiating the GPDP, we were also looking then at how local governments and community-based organizations of women could work together. And now finally, back to the, oh my, somebody really has a problem. Is this okay? Yeah, thanks. It's telling me to move on. Chalo. Where do I? Can I have some help, please, with moving this? Or you could move from there if you have a problem. Yeah. So start with the first slide, please. Can you go back? Kudumbashree as a mission started in 1998. It was the Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who inaugurated, launched the Kudumbashree mission. At that point of time, Kudumbashree was known as the State Poverty Eradication Mission in 1998, and it also had a 10-year agenda. It was supposed to wind up in 10 years, and by that time, it was also supposed to have resolved the problem of poverty in the state. It was registered in the Trivandrum-Kochi Act, and so the thing about Kudumbashree and what makes it different from SHG collectives in the country has been the fact that it is, from the word go, the mission has been associated with local governments. In fact, it was the local, so first started off in a few panchayats. You had it also took some learnings from urban experiences in poverty alleviation, and the two converged together to form Kudumbashree. Next, please. Next. Yeah. So Kudumbashree is the nodal agency for the implementation of centrally sponsored schemes which deal with livelihoods and which deal with poverty alleviation. And it deals with, which would include slum development, housing, the skill development programs, but also the NULM and RLM, of course. So the 3 pillars of empowerment, and you see that little logo up there in the corner. This logo of Kudumbashree is something, the idea behind the logo also was that it was women empowerment, social empowerment, financial empowerment. The colors were that for gender, and the shoots were green, which was so aspirational, blooming. So it was about being able to bloom into prosperity, wellness, well-being, and happiness. So that's the idea of Kudumbashree. And this idea is something which almost every woman in the Kudumbashree network knows and carries in her heart. Right, so in the space of the National Resource Organization for NRLM, Kudumbashree has been working in 2 areas specifically. One is in the PRI, CBO convergence, that is the convergence of local governments and their interventions, particularly the Finance Commission grants, MGNR, Regis, etc., along with what is a space for community-based organizations of women to the SHG collective to actually engage with these power structures and engage both for accessing various services, but also for participating in development. Yes, next please. I think we are going backward. Yes, that's right. And Kudumbashree, so because Kudumbashree is associated with the local governments, obviously the story of Kudumbashree, okay. Let me see if it works. Huh? Yes, it does. Good. It works, thanks. So the story of Kudumbashree actually starts with the story of the constitutional amendments. And the 73rd and 74th amendments came out. They brought in Panchayati Raj and urban local governance in a way that hadn't happened before. And Kerala, mind you, I mean, today we are known as a pillar of democratic decentralization. But when the amendments came, in the ranking of states, we were among the laggards, really the worst performing state in decentralized governance. So post the amendment brought in this new idea of, can you work the local governments differently? And that was when the big bang of decentralized, it was called the Janagya Asutranam, which roughly translates to People's Plan. So People's Plan campaign started in 1996, and that was a big ticket. At that point of time, they were saying people need to take control over resources, need to take control over their plans. And that was the idea behind it, which also meant that the local governments at one go were given, institutions were transferred to the local governments, health, education, welfare institutions, agriculture, animal husbandry, livelihood institutions, sectoral institutions, SC, ST development, all these were transferred overnight to the local governments. And the officers in these institutions suddenly found that they had to work under the local governments. This includes the ICDS also, by the way. So Anganwadis, tribal hostels, the works, all of these suddenly came under the control of the local governments. And, but the local governments were supposed to make plans only on the basis of what the Gram Sabhas approved and what the ward Sabhas, in the urban areas, it was the ward Sabhas. So would like to make this distinction. The unit of planning, the unit in which the village assembly or the ward assembly is that of is the last constituent ward assembly of the municipality, or in the case of the Gram Panchayats, it is the Gram Panchayat ward, because the Gram Panchayat in Kerala is gigantic, 30,000 plus people. So there is no way you can have an assembly of people of that kind of numbers. So which is why they broke it down into so the Gram Sabha is actually the Ward Sabha. It's been so in rural, it's been so in urban as well. Thanks. Yeah, so this was this huge thing that was happening. And the idea was that the local governments, that the ward sabhas would then, people would just rush into these assemblies and start talking about their needs, and we would get wonderful plans which address the needs of people. But that's not what happened. You found that there was bedlam and confusion. You also found, which was a matter of major concern for the government, because the government was slowly and steadily getting into women-centric interventions and projects. And then they suddenly found that it didn't matter that 1/3 of the elected representatives were women, because these women were coming in from political parties that did not have much space for the women. So they were basically proxies for others, and that is problematic. And you could see it reflected in the fact that all of a sudden, with the People's Plan campaign, programs which were targeting women just disappeared. So then the government decided that you had to correct this, you had to have course correction. And they also found something else, that women were missing in the Gram Sabhas, the women were missing in the Ward Sabhas. There was just no participation of women. So to address that, oops, why am I going back? There you go, sorry. Oh, anyway, to address that, the Women's Component Plan was introduced in the local governments. And the Women's Component Plan was that necessarily out of the resources that were available to the local government, 10% had to be set apart for direct interventions in favor of women empowerment. They also did something else. They said that we need to have neighborhood groups that would discuss the plans and bring it to the Ward Sabha, so that there was a greater understanding in the Ward Sabha. The Ward Sabha could become a formality. And in the neighborhood groups, when they looked at the neighborhood groups, they found that even in the neighborhood groups, the women were missing. The women were the ones who served chai. They did not participate in discussions. You had also an interesting development at that point of time, which was that, decentralization of governance was regarded as decentralization of corruption. And so the government at the time wanted to counter that, and they said, let's bring women in a big way, because women are not corrupt. I mean, that was the understanding at that time. Of course, because they were not corrupt, because they did not have control over anything. The moment power comes into the system, of course, things change. But at that point of time, they didn't have it. And so it was a wonderful thing to just bring women in a big way into the whole local governance agenda. And that's what they did. And Kudumbashree was born out of that, which is also why you would notice that no matter what you say, no matter how you call SHG, self-help groups, collectives, ALFs, Kudumbashree calls itself neighborhood groups. Because they were supposed to be neighborhood groups that discussed matters of local importance prior to the Ward Sabhas. So now let's look at how, the institutionalization. It all starts in 1992 in Alleppey district, where an experiment in trying to look at participatory poverty reduction, whether the community could take the lead in poverty reduction. And at that time, and I'm sure we're all grappling with it even today, was a question of how do you define the poor? How do you identify them? How do you know who is the poor? Because none of our surveys have worked. They always go off target. We always end up incorporating people who aren't poor and leaving out the ones who are. So it was like, maybe communities on their own could identify the poor better, was the idea. And that was the experiment that happened in Alleppey, which was then expanded to all urban governments. And by 1998, this 3-member committee came up with the concept note of Kudumbashree, and there you go. That's how it happened. And Kudumbashree started with 200 odd local governments, and then over a period of 3 to 4 years, spread and went everywhere. So 2003, CDS all over the state, and 2007 was an important year for Kudumbashree, because by this time, the SGSY groups, the SJSRY groups, all of these centrally sponsored scheme groups were existing outside of Kudumbashree. You also had groups which were supported by the WCD. The Women and Child Development Department also had groups which were existing outside the Kudumbashree network. You had communal organizations who were like the various organizations and various NGOs were also promoting groups. So there was this multiplicity of SDGs that was happening right there. And I'm sure we're facing that problem even now. So Kudumbashree took a very radical position at that time. Kudumbashree said, you know what, because the going wisdom at that time was that women should not be in multiple groups. Because when you are in multiple groups, it means multiple liability, multiple debt, and therefore we do not want to increase the debt burden. So we have to try to ensure that they are exclusively in one group or the other. But Kudumbashree, at that point of time, decided to think differently. Kudumbashree decided that, very often we join a group because it is an extension of our identity. It could be your political identity, your communal identity, it could be a social identity, it could be some other thing, it could be an entrepreneurial identity. And it did not, if we allowed the whole world to do that, who are we to say that the women of Kudumbashree could not have multiple identities and could not, and if we can trust ourselves to figure out as to how much loan we can take, how much we can handle, how do we presume that the poor don't know how to do that, particularly if they've been through this? So there was the arrogance of the state in deciding that the women or the poor women or poor people were not managing their finances properly. So we thought we should let it open to anyone and everyone who wanted to join Kudumbashree to so do. And that was how the unified bylaw came in, because Kudumbashree made radical changes. It allowed anyone to join the Kudumbashree network. It did not, it gave up its idea of saying that we are going to do the targeting. This is supposed to be self-targeted. So if people felt the need to join the network, let them join, was a decision. A second decision was also that we realized that the control of the local government over the Kudumbashree networks was very strong. And that, while it helped in a lot of charitable activity by the local government, it was completely disempowering for the community network. So empowerment of the network necessitated freedom from the local government. So Kudumbashree also then broke that umbilical cord connection between the local government and the Kudumbashree network. And Kudumbashree did one more thing, which was that it decided that within the network itself, because by that time we were close to 10 years, within the network itself, vested interests were building. So Kudumbashree said, maybe we have to break these vested interests, and the only way we could do that would be by having elections. So every 3 years, from 2008, Kudumbashree has been holding statewide elections. The district collector, the entire administration then gears towards conducting these elections. These elections are, so 46 lakh women participate in elections. They choose from the neighborhood group. So it is even the SHG, the leadership within the SHG changes every 3 years. It is interesting, The first time we did this election, we found a lot of defunct SHGs suddenly coming back and registering themselves. Why? Because they said we were completely held captive by our leadership. And here was an opportunity to break that, to revive the group, because we now are able to choose our leader, and then the leader, by virtue of being someone chosen by us, becomes accountable and answerable to us. So suddenly Kudumbashree's, in 2008, we found a surge in membership that happened with new neighborhood groups, old dead neighborhood groups coming back into action. And the elections were fought, the elections were won. Later on, over time, Kudumbashree also worked out that, within the network of elections, we needed to bring in reservation. So Kudumbashree now has reservation for SC and ST separately. Leadership positions of Kudumbashree mimic that of the system, and that's, so this, I'm going into detail about this because this usually doesn't get talked about. And if you ask old-timers in Kudumbashree as to what were the most empowering things, what was it that changed Kudumbashree, what was it that made it sustain itself, they are going to say the bylaw, and the elections. So that's important to know. I don't think anyone else has gone that route because it's not something that we normally look at as part of a livelihood intervention. But this was very responsible for suddenly making a group of women who are puppets of a local administration strategic leaders in their own right. So yes, and of course we have the NRLM, etc. So as was mentioned, you have the gender dimension. So 2008, that's very interesting. 2008 was when the bylaw was modified and women came into these spaces. But then, by 2010, when the next Panchayat Raj and urban local government elections were due, the government then decided that, women have come into their own. So that was when 50% reservation for local governments. So the very next elections, 50% reservation was instituted in the state of Kerala. Another very important thing is, so how is the engagement? What exactly is the space between the local government and the Kudumbashree network on the ground? So Kudumbashree, like everywhere else, is a three-tier federation. You have the Kudumbashree self-help group. We call them the neighborhood groups. There is an area-level federation. The area-level federation of Kudumbashree, which is the ADS, is always at the level of the ward. So it is contiguous with the ward. And when the ward changes, the federation also then moves around so that it is always contiguous with the ward. And similarly, the CDS, which is a city-level federation, is contiguous with the city, except when the city becomes too big. Because when you have too much of scales, big city corporations, just impossible to have so many women and all of them reporting under a very small leadership network. So then we broke them into zones, again parallel to the city zones, and each zone would then develop the Kudumbashree network, therefore would have multiple CDSs in big cities. So that having been done, the next step is, how does this interface happen? And it's important to know, everywhere the law mandates that the plans are actually discussed in the ward sabhas. But who discusses them in the ward sabha, and how does this discussion happen? The Kudumbashree network, by virtue of its connect with the local government, it is involved in the entire local planning. So the working groups which develop sectoral plans, every working group will have someone from Kudumbashree in them. The ward sabha notices, they are all given through the Kudumbashree network. So Kudumbashree network ensures the presence of the women of Kudumbashree in the ward sabhas. And because of that, today, so when I was the district collector, we had less than 10% participation of women in the ward sabhas. Today, the participation is over 80%. And now the rush is on to find the men. Where are the men in the ward sabhas? So we've got to do something now for the men to bring them into the ward sabhas. But the women right now are ruling the roost. They are everywhere. You were mentioning that you find them everywhere. Go to the ward sabhas, you're going to find women there. And they are not puppets, mind you. They are not there to just sit and They are there to contribute and give suggestions and take a call, dissent. All of that happens within the ward sabhas. So the third stage is, of course, the fact that in implementation too, Kudumbashree has come in as partner to local governments. And local governments have become a little bit bolder in the kind of projects they do, especially for local economic development, because now you've got this network. And this network is supported by a mission. And the mission, so both the mission and the network, both of them are called Kudumbashree. So when the network comes up with an idea of intervention, the mission comes in and provides the technical hand-holding and support. And so that becomes an interesting engagement of sorts. And so new and interesting ideas get continually explored. And for that, we also felt that it was important that, it is not enough that these women participate in the ward sabhas. They would need to know what to say. So they need to do a little bit of deliberations, internal introspection beforehand, before going into the ward sabhas. And how do they do that? So for that, the CDS action plan was developed, which is the VPRP. The VPRP, UPRP have come out of that. The idea that there has to be a demand plan which comes up from the network. And this demand plan is something which is first cleared in the Kudumbashree network and then goes to the local government, and the local government has to deliberate on this plan and incorporate it into their projects. And we in the government come out with guidelines to ensure that this is done. All this happen, you have the governing body which is headed by the minister. We saw the minister. And we have a mission. The Kudumbashree mission works in both the rural and the urban. It is just one mission. The NULM mission and the NRLM mission are just one and the same. The Kudumbashree state mission is supported by the district mission. And then you've got the Kudumbashree at the level of the ULB. You've got the CDS. At the ward level, you have the ADS, and then you have the neighborhood groups. So, and what is to help the interface with the local governments? The member secretary of the Kudumbashree network is an officer. And the member secretary is always the assistant secretary, additional secretary of the urban local government. The local government comes in, we call it a Vilayathal Samiti. Do not be fooled by the name. There is no Vilayathal evaluation that is done. It basically is the committee which looks into figuring out what is the convergence that the local government and the Kudumbashree network can do. It receives the CDS demand plan, it discusses and deliberates on the CDS demand plan and takes it back into the local government for discussions. I've already talked about the integration, and the funds were mentioned by the minister also about the 2% UPA funds. Now look at the areas of integration. This has helped, of course, by the fact that the local government, all these sectors are inside the local government, so it helps. But you've got health, education, SC, ST, fisheries, agriculture. Police, that's an independent thing, that's not within the system. It's an integration outside the system. Excise too, because Kudumbashree is right now very active in the Lahari Vimukta campaign, which is like, say no to drugs campaign and things like that. So with a strong, robust network, suddenly all your social messaging goes through that network. And while for the government it's a convenient social channel to get the messages out, for the Kudumbashree network, all of this is information understanding. And through information and understanding comes knowledge, and through knowledge comes power. And you also have various corporations, etc., who are working with the Kudumbashree network. So how does Kudumbashree work for poverty eradication and women empowerment? I mean, when I was in Kudumbashree, I was plagued by the idea that women empowerment and poverty management worked in two different directions. Because for women empowerment, you need an inclusive, larger community. Poverty eradication had to be very targeted. So then you were excluding people who are non-poor. So it was like, you can do one or the other. You can't do both. But the bylaw and the change in that bylaw actually taught us that you can do both. So, because this network, you bring in a larger voice into the network, and that voice starts showing itself and speaking on behalf of the poor. So, and we have invested so much in building leadership among these women. And that has, all of that is very critical to, for the fact that Kudumbashree has sustained itself 25 years down the line. So creating the space for planning, the capacity building for entitlements, and also creating structural systems of engagement. So it is not ad hoc. All of these systems are structured, laid down in the law, in the processes, and every year we reiterate that. Every new set of local governments that come, every new set of officers who come, every new set of Kudumbashree network CDS who come, we train them on what those systems are so that everybody is in the know. And of course, and this is cardinal to the idea of NULM and NRLM, which is about the capability of communities and the resource, the human, the social capital of communities. So investing in community resources to strengthen the capability of community has also been an approach of Kudumbashree. So which are the various areas of capacity building, roles and responsibilities, bylaw? So interestingly, 2008 when we came out with the bylaw, so how do you train on a bylaw? He said the only way to do it is to get the whole lot of them to sit down and read it through. And I remember at that time, I was traveling in Idukki, which is a hilly district, Western Ghats, and it was 7 o'clock and we were supposed to meet a joint liability group of women farmers. It was too late in the day, it was dark, the elephants were going to come out, so we decided to go. But then we got information that these women had come together and they were waiting for us and there was no way that we could just leave. So then we went down the valley and I managed to come across a group of just 17, 18 women in the middle of nowhere. There was no light. We just had a small match, a small candle. And by the candle, it was too late to do anything. There was no joint liability group, no farming, nothing that we could see. So we just engaged in conversations. And while we were engaging in this conversation, I just asked them, anything about the bylaw? And I was astounded by how they came back at me to say, these are all the provisions, these are the changes that have come about in the bylaw. That was my goosebump moment, to realize that something as simple as just telling people to have peer reviews and discussions would impact a community of women in the most remotest of places. So yes, we sometimes underestimate the capability and the hunger of the poor for knowledge and capability. Communication skills, very important. Because when we first invested in community trainers, everybody laughed at us because these community trainers were women from the network who did not, who were very uncomfortable in public spaces. There was a woman who told us about how she got so frightened that she just fainted, for her first public speech. But then that woman came back and she was narrating that experience, and the entire group of about 300 people were eating out of her hands. That's the transformation we got to see. Just by believing in them, just by respecting them, and just by respecting their experience, and creating a training methodology that worked with that. Because when you're working with community resource persons, you don't train the way you train professionals. It's a very different experience out there. So, and investing in communication skills, so the first thing about communication skill was also about belief, self-belief. So starting with self-belief and moving on into language and ways and means of communicating were something that we did. Capacity building was very interesting because we organized, celebrations become capacity building. So every year, this started in the 10th year of Kudumbashree when we said, okay, let's celebrate Kudumbashree, the day of Kudumbashree, May 17th, when Kudumbashree was inaugurated. And today, 25 years down the line, the government has declared May 17th as Kudumbashree Day. for the entire state. It is May 17th. But when it started, it was like, let all, in the CDS, let's have celebrations, let's have programs. Let the CDS give an account of itself. Let it present its report before the community. And then let us have, cultural events. And that just went crazy. Across the board, you would find not just the CDS, but at the area level federation, at the ward level federation, at the neighborhood group, they decided they would need to celebrate. So they would fix a date, they would celebrate, they would go the exact same route, they would present their accounts. So it was like, annual budget, annual stakeholders meetings. That's the way Kudumbashree just decided, all because we decided to celebrate Kudumbashree's anniversary. And that came down, and then the local governments also, you had all these women coming together. They would call out, they would ask local drama teams, to come and teach them to sing and dance and play and set up performances. And then that was the beginning of what you saw here today. There is actually a possibility here. You can use that also as communication. Another thing we did was to encourage competition among the Kudumbashree network. So we had CDS competition for the best CDS. It was not about us selecting who was the best CDS. It was about the CDS selecting who was the best CDS. So it was peer evaluation and review. And by God, you should see the fire with which they would contest and the grace with which they would accept the one who won. So all of this actually contributes to capacity building, because all of this was about strategically empowering and strengthening them and messaging the message that they were the voice of the poor, that they were the ones who stood for the inarticulate, that the marginalized could find voice only through them. And that became a matter of great pride and resolution for these women. So yes, waste management, disaster management, risk reduction, everything. Now for the state, it is like, get the Kudumbashree network going. Latest thing, you would have heard about Brahmapuram. So the Brahmapuram fire meant that the High Court got into action, and I am right now regularly appearing before the High Court. And already in 2 months' time, I've had 5 times I've had to appear before the court. But the court is insisting that within 1 year, we become completely solid waste management rules compliant. And how do we do that? I mean, of course, we've gone a long way, and it is like urban, rural, no distinction. You're an educated committee, you've got to be compliant. And unfortunately, it's the more educated you are, the less compliant you are, is what our experience has been. Anyway, notwithstanding that, when we think of figuring out how we do solid waste management rules and compliance, immediately it comes to mind, let's work through the Kudumbashree network. The Kudumbashree network, there are 34,000 women who are working as waste collectors on the ground. Out of these 34,000 women, there are 10,000 of them who are our mentor resource persons, who have an understanding of waste management which is better than the CEO of the sanitation mission. And then these very same women would be able to bring the message home to 46 lakh families. So, you think big, you think of anything, it is through the Kudumbashree network that information goes down. Convergence. Microfinance, so as part of that, it was interesting too. In the early days when Kudumbashree, it was all about, the women can do anything and everything. But we said, wait. Can they do accounting? If you're going to bring in a lot of money into the Kudumbashree network for various sources, who is going to be handling this? They've got to do the social networking, the engagement, the development interventions. They can't be looking after the accounts as well. Somebody's got to handle the accounts. So we brought in accountants into the Kudumbashree network. And then you've got, the entire network. There is always, when there is money that is being handled, there is always the risk of it being mishandled. So rather than go to the chartered accountant or look at some other public auditing system, we created from, again, as an enterprise group, CAS, which is a Kudumbashree Audit and Account Service Society. So this society does the annual accounts of every neighborhood group's accounts, the area development society accounts, the CDS accounts, and sometimes also helps the state mission. Today it's helping other local missions of the state to figure out their accounts whenever we need to do some rationalization and understanding. Financial literacy, of course, you know that. Livelihood, so demand-driven, sometimes it is in favor of a social cause. To give an example of a social cause, palliative care. Kerala is a state where palliative care is given to the terminally ill. And Kudumbashree network actually functions as extension nurses who go, they also do community counseling. So if there's a social cause, there's a livelihood opportunity there, you find that Kudumbashree will find its way into it. Convergence, there are traditional occupations and there are also innovative upfront event management linked interventions too that Kudumbashree does. Some pictures too which would explain this better. So all this gardening and landscaping is after my time. The Janasevana Kendram is before my time. Coconut climbing unit came up because my predecessor, T.K. Jose, after his stint in Kudumbashree, went on to become the MD of the Coconut Development Corporation. So lo and behold, suddenly we find Kudumbashree women have started climbing trees. Community kitchens, toiletries, mushroom units, poultry units, tuition centers. So tuition centers again, from the point of view of education, remedial education, laundry units, the general day assistance. So you find that Kudumbashree has a variety of engagements, be it the service sector, the production sector, be it in agriculture, animal husbandry, or allied, be it in... So it's got its finger in most every pie. And the more it shows itself resilient and capable of doing things, the more institutions, organizations, departments start coming in search of Kudumbashree for collaboration. And Kudumbashree is also, so this is not all hunky-dory. There are always enterprises that fail. There are problems that you face. But just as I mentioned CAS and our community trainers, so too in the area of micro-enterprises, we looked at developing community resource. And there was this, I remember long ago, there was this group called the Timbuktu Collective that came in, and they actually identified some of our micro-enterprise consultants who were, at that point of time, they were only doing forwarding applications to banks and helping SAGs get loans. But they got these guys together and taught them the basic of mathematics, accounting, counseling, the issues that face units, and made them, work with sick units and revive them, and did a hand-holding throughout, at the end of which we had some fabulous consultants, community resource, who had come in. And these community resource have now fanned out into other states and are part of the National Resource Organization, which is supporting livelihood elsewhere in the country as well. So rejuvenation of sick units, understanding what's going wrong, because everyone is part of the family, and helping them, solving their problems is also part of the issue. So Kudumbashree, it just cannot afford to sleep. Napkin units, of course, there are other places. Street light repairing. Now that the state has decided that it is going to go completely local LED lights, replacing conventional lights in all the streets of the state. So Kudumbashree has suddenly found that O&M, maintenance, repair, is something that an opportunity has come up, and they've come in. Event management teams, daycare centers, of course. As I mentioned, the LED bulb assembling units, buggy servicing, painting units. Just to give you a sense that the sky is actually the limit. That was what these women were singing earlier in the day. So when you have all of that, then you need to also figure out marketing. Because, I mean, that's something that we've struggled with all our, every time we work on livelihoods. Because how does a micro unit of poor people contest against scale, against the big players? How can you get a part of that market? So then, for us, it has been about maybe your own community. If you have 46 lakh people in your pocket, then they themselves can become part of your market. That is one. A second thing is that there is something that you give which nobody else can. So you've got to find that USP and build on it. And that would require labeling, branding, coming up with an entire, the entire marketing strategy. And so now we have done that, and many of our units have their own names and have gone and developed and diversified on their own. But alongside that, we've also had looked at getting into online platforms. So, how did the fairs come about? The government suddenly, one fine morning I found in the budget that the government decided that they were going to set up 1,000 shops for Kudumbashree. We said, how can you set up 1,000 shops? Who will do the merchandising? Who will do the management? Who will do do we have consistency in the products that we have? I mean, this was about 15 years ago. And so we said, first of all, we need to develop in these women, the capability of doing this. And so we set up monthly markets. And then the monthly markets grew into the Onam markets. And from the Onam markets, they became all kinds of trades and practices, from actual production to just trading. They developed the skills of that. And many of these then went into their own enterprises. We also looked at saying that in some enterprises, at least, there is an opportunity for us to intervene and standardize the enterprise. So the take-home ration, Kudumbashree came up with Nutrimix units. So for today, take-home ration, the nutritional supplement in all of Kerala is supplied through Kudumbashree. The community marketing network home shop, the idea of the home shop was what I was mentioning, that the community itself becomes your market and you work with that community. So there too we positioned a group which would act as a go-between, ensure that the product the product supply line was not affected, that the quality was consistent, and the end reach and the customers were satisfied. So they did the entire servicing and worked between the community on the one side and the producers on the other. We also, the food that you are eating today is also a similar enterprise where we found a resource group of young people. We've been struggling to think, canteens, Kudumbashree, women, makes sense that would be an area of entrepreneurial development. But for these women, getting into that kind of quality bar where they get noticed, where they are consistent, that they bring value to the table, and that they make good money. How do you do that? How do you position them to do that? We tried putting them in government canteens, and it was utter failure. It just didn't work. So then we said, get them out of government because that's not working right. And we were thinking about how we improve their quality. And that's when we my program officer came across this group of youngsters who knew hotel management and said that, we would like to maybe just do the hand-holding of a couple of small groups. And from there, the idea of Cafe Kudumbashree was born. And, after the 2 days of the workshop, you'll tell us as to whether you are happy with the services that they give. You can see down here, Cafe Kudumbashree and the scale that it has gone. By the way, Cafe Kudumbashree has traveled to Dubai to cater to events there as well. Again, some just pictures. Now moving on into social development. The minister spoke about the Extreme Poverty Eradication Program. This was an exercise we did last year. We had 14 lakh people sit together in focus group discussions to identify that 1% of poor who were poorer than everybody else. So it was pushing our buttons because, everybody tries to influence the political leadership to get into the list. And this was about saying that you need to say that you are not eligible to get into this list. How do we make them do that? So, and the Kudumbashree network, so out of this 14 lakh, 7 lakh of the FGDs were actually done within the Kudumbashree network. But from the next step there is about family plans. Micro plans have been made for each of these families that have been identified, 64,000 families, and these micro plans are now under implementation. So from services to ration cards, to Aadhaar cards, to social security pensions, to then into having food and medicine and support and health interventions, and wherever possible livelihood support, all of that is now being worked out. Kudumbashree, an area where Kudumbashree has worked and which brings tears to the eyes of anybody who goes there, is the Bud School. What are these schools? These are schools for differently abled. And when we say differently abled, we're talking about children who cannot go to special schools. Children who are sometimes tied up in their homes because their family has to go out and work and bring food to the table. People with microcephaly, full-grown bodies and tiny little heads, or people with thalassemia, people with cerebral palsy who cannot do anything to save their lives. Those kind of children in families who are desperate and who are just praying that they die before I do. That kind of family, those kind of children have now been put into schools and are being cared for by the Kudumbashree network in collaboration with local governments. So this is another part of the, the marginalized, the completely invisible, the ones whom you think there is absolutely no help for. The Kudumbashree network with local governments has been able to push local governments to actually support them, and the tribal area as well. So that picture that you see of that little boy standing is of a kid so 60 to 70% of these children are very severely mentally challenged. So that's what you see there. Right, so, and then in social, you have a network of 46 lakh families, 46 lakh women. Obviously, gender is a concern. So Kudumbashree is bent on fostering gender equality, gender equity, creating equal opportunity, and working on the issues that affect women, including violence against women and children. And so you have a help desk, you have community counseling, you have gender resource persons, you have, well, not vigilante groups per se, but you work with the Jagrata Samitis on the ground. We also have a very interesting exercise in which we've done crime mapping. So you actually identify hotspots of violence or potential violence against women. To give you an example, school children identified the bus as a hotspot. The bus that they were traveling to school, where you had, people with perverted miscreants who would behave very badly with them. So it actually helped in us figuring out how you dealt with all of that. And this was dealt with, this was understood at a local level and resolved at a local level. So that's what crime mapping, the gender self-learning program was interestingly also about getting women to just discuss amongst themselves. Because many women felt that they, whatever was happening this was all part of their fate and this was how things were. To say that no, the law tells you differently and you've got space there in a way that they understood is what gender self-learning program is also about. You've seen our art and theatre groups. This is just some pictures of that. And I think it's time for me to come to the end of this show. I won't get into all of this, various sectors. So civil supplies, animal husbandry, transport, tourism, Jal Jeevan, we working with them, with non-resident Keralite affairs, with health, with beverages, collegiate education, setting up Shri hostels and etc. Then women and child development, motor vehicles, e-services. So that's the dimension within which Kudumbashree is working. And also Kudumbashree looks at the future generation, children. So inculcating a sense of responsibility to the marginalized. inculcating a sense of responsibility for gender, inculcating a sense of ownership of environment and working for the betterment of environment and understanding all this. This is again something which Kudumbashree believes in and has invested in. So, I was mentioning the waste management initiative. When we asked Kudumbashree to do this, your vacation time, the Bala Sabhas came out. And you had Shuyuta rallies being done, Kutti Pattalams, they said, the works. So the children really came out in support of this. Again, Kerala Chicken. On the one hand, you see the waste effort. There's this pink cafe. The transport department's old buses have been transformed into cafes. I don't agree with the color pink, but nevertheless. So, yeah. Transgender Forum, campaigns against dowry, the Snehita calling bell, the anti-drug campaign, etc. All of these are areas of convergence that the women are involved in. And so they don't do this just on stage, they do it out on the ground, in corners, street corners, everywhere. These are a couple of those institutions which have been set up. Many of them have been set up with the help of the local government. So the local government provides the infrastructure, they come in with the soft skills. Housing is also an area, so we've been the agency for housing, so multiple departments working on the area of insurance as well, Ujjwala, etc. Kudumbashree has been involved. The Urban Poverty Reduction Plan, I've already mentioned, the CDS Action Plan and the dimensions. Kudumbashree has set up what some of you will be seeing tomorrow, day after, in the metro. The Kochi Metro, as you know, is run by the women of Kudumbashree. That's how the KIBS Initiative for Business Solutions came up. And how did this happen? One of our senior officers, who was the first CEO of the Kochi Metro, said, I want to do this differently. So would Kudumbashree be able to help me out? And so you ask Kudumbashree, and Kudumbashree never says no. A problem, but it never says no. So straight away they went ahead and figured it out and did the facility management. So everything from the counters to the sweeping to all the interventions around the Kochi Metro are now operated and managed by this initiative for business solutions, which has now taken over the Kochi airport as well. So you find that it's not just in small scale, but even going big. Kudumbashree has been able to show its professionalism. Centrally sponsored schemes, I don't need to tell you everything that's been involved. And then the National Resource Organization. So forget this slide. So how did the National Resource Organization come about? I take a bit of pride there, because when I moved to the NRLM, so Kudumbashree, and how could Kudumbashree support this initiative, the National Initiative for Livelihoods, was the question. That was when in Andhra Pradesh, the Telangana Andhra Pradesh community organizations were already functioning as National Resource Organization for creating the institutions creating the CBOs elsewhere. So Kudumbashree had to come into some other space. And that's when the interface between local governments and the community network. So that was one space we identified. Another space we identified, because at that time, everybody was into microfinance, nobody was into business, into enterprise. So enterprise and supporting enterprises, getting all these lessons of Kudumbashree and taking them and not replicating them, but using that understanding as a lens to understand what the business challenges of the place were, to using the understanding of Kudumbashree of how you strengthen community resources to help the community resources of that place get strengthened. That was what Kudumbashree did, and that's how the Kudumbashree NRO has come about. So while we are not in the urban space, this is where we are in the rural space. 20 partner states, and there are special projects in Sikkim, Goa, and Lakshadweep as well. We've also gone across to Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, South Africa, Uganda, and Ethiopia. This is just our numbers and awards, chalo. So this is the last slide, which is about the way forward, but I think I shouldn't really be talking about the way forward. That is for us to discuss. One of the things that Kudumbashree has recognized, you remember, we are a 25-year-old organization. So women who were 30 when they joined Kudumbashree are now 55. It means that Kudumbashree is aging. And for Kudumbashree, the challenge now is to get young blood into the system. And the young blood doesn't want to come the way the old blood did. So we have to be innovative and figure out how we attract new young blood into Kudumbashree, and that's the idea of the auxiliary group. So this is a group of women from the families of Kudumbashree who are not part of the energy per se, but who are given a space, and that space is what are the things that enthuse the young, getting them to involve with that, giving them opportunities of engaging. So one of the opportunities that we've had is now these guys have been doing all the digital surveys that we're doing are now run through the women of the auxiliary groups. So, and also the state has now come up with this fantastic thing, that notion that they're going to create 20 lakh jobs in the space of the next 3 years. So where are these jobs going to come from? The auxiliary groups are in the, spearheading that, figuring it out, looking at skill development, looking at employer-employee connect, all of that. There is this entire universe of knowledge economy that is being floated, and they are actively participating in it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, may I invite Angamaly ma'am, Executive Director, Kudumbashree, to handle a presentation on envisioning Kudumbashree as an urban NRO.
Greetings, everyone, once again. I understand that I'm the one standing between you and the lunch, so I'll try to keep it very brief. To set the context, the session is about envisioning Kudumbashree as an urban NRO. So I'll very briefly set the context. See, Kudumbashree was designated as an NRO for National Rural Livelihood Mission in the year 2012. And it started its operations in September 2013. Over the past roughly a decade, Kudumbashree has done exemplary work. So, Madam gave you the statistics, I'll just repeat. Today, Kudumbashree has its presence in 25 states and 1 union territory in the country. So you can understand it covers majority of the country today. And not just nationally, Kudumbashree has marked its impact across the borders as well. So Kudumbashree has given its support services in countries in African continent like Ethiopia, Uganda, Azerbaijan, and South Africa. So Kudumbashree has a huge experience as an NRO, but in the National Rural Livelihood Mission side. So we have the NULM officials also here. So we would like to take this opportunity to urge and request and propose Kudumbashree as an NRO for the Urban Livelihood Mission as well. To take you into the details, I would invite our COO for NRLM, Mr. Sajid Sukumaran.
Thank you, ma'am. So what we are trying to do is envision Kudumbashree as a national resource organization for NULM. Therefore, we will start with what, as Madam and also Sharda ma'am said about Kudumbashree's work as an NRO, so that we can place it in context and also understand how it works now, and think over how it can be used, that these concepts can be used for NULM also. Okay, as Madam said, in 2012, MORD recognized Kudumbashree as a national resource organization, and we started working in 2013. Now we have reached actually 25 states with the one program going for national rollout. the areas in which Kudumbashree provides support, as an NRO, Kudumbashree is expected to provide support to SRLM, State Rural Livelihood Missions, on different schemes. The areas in which we provide technical support, one is on the convergence between the Panchayati Raj institutions and the federations of the self-help groups. The second is we have been providing training at the national level for developing the self-help groups plans and integrating them at the federation level and trying to integrate, presenting them to the PRIs, the Panchayat Raj institutions, and to integrate them with the GPDP, which is the Gram Panchayat Development Plans. For this, Kudumbashree NRO is the national level trainer. And it has also been recognized as the knowledge partner for the universal rollout, for which the PRI CBO convergence strategy has been now accepted, which is a convergence between the Panchayat Raj institutions and the community-based organization. Kudumbashree is also a technical support agency for National Rural Economic Transformation Project, NRETP. Then it is a technical support agency for food services cluster projects, under which it supports currently Rajasthan, Odisha, UP and Madhya Pradesh. And it has been a project implementation agency for Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program since the program was launched. And how it works is what I am trying to explain now. Kudumbashree has a pool of 78 professionals. These people are picked up from institutions like Tata Institute of Social Sciences and Asim Premji University, the humanities departments of IITs, etc. And these people are specially trained over a 3.5-month period time and then put on-the-job training and then deployed in states for supporting the SRLMs. But what whom they support is basically for the work, the people who really carry out the work, who are the former community leaders of Kudumbashree. There are 343 mentors. We have named them mentors, as that's exactly the role that they carry out in the states. And there are different categories of mentors we have. Now as years passed and we have developed resources across states, we have mentors from our partner states as well. And there are different categories of mentors on the enterprise domain. There are specialist mentors on convergence domain. There are also specialist mentors on promoting cafe enterprises. There are mentors who work as a central pool to support other mentors in different states. This is basically the way we work, as a combination of professionals and community resource persons separately, specially trained as mentors. And how it happens is, on the PRI CBO convergence domain, we support SRLMs to develop local resource groups. These are community leaders who come up, who are selected from the SSG network and trained to mobilize the self-help groups and develop their plans and participate in the Gram Sabha, work with the panchayats, present their plans in the Gram Sabha, and also to work with the panchayats to make them aware that there are something called self-help groups. In many places when we started working, panchayats were not really aware. And making our panchayats aware about how they can gain from engaging with self-help groups and their federations. And then these people are trained and developed to work like this as local resource groups, from where we have even developed mentors to work in other states. For instance, we have people who selected and trained from Chhattisgarh who have been working in Uttar Pradesh to promote the same project. We also, as part of the project, developed new institutional systems. For instance, as Sharada ma'am said, in Kerala, the top level federation is coterminous with the Panchayat Raj institution or the municipality. In other states, it's not like that. So we have promoted institutions which help this collaboration and convergence between the Panchayat Raj institutions or any kind of local government for that matter. We have worked in areas, supported SRLMs in areas where there is PESA, also areas under Schedule 6, areas in Mizoram like places under state tax, etc. And for the Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program on the enterprise front, this has been an experience which was mentioned here in the earlier presentation, the Micro Enterprise Consultants Training Program, which is basically a very structured program where we teach community resource persons who are mostly women selected from the communities over a 6-month period through a very structured program in business development. And this is a program where we teach them almost everything that a business school teaches its students, other than maybe portfolio theory or something very advanced. They will know how to do a break-even analysis, how to project a cash flow, how to project a balance sheet, and how to prepare a plan for getting a loan from a bank. And we have also trained business development support personnel under the NRETP program, where we devised a separate training program for MORD. This is meant for higher order enterprises, where the revenues are expected to be more than the micro enterprises promoted under programs like SVEP. For the food service enterprises, we have taken a strategy of developing state resource groups, so that when the NRO withdraws also, these groups can continue the work of promoting the food service enterprises. And for this, the basic difference here is the mentors and the state resource group people work in states on food services enterprises can not only promote enterprises, they also know how to develop cuisines, how to cook, and everything. And for that kind of a skill development, we have collaborated with the Institute of Catering and Hotel Management in Trivandrum, in Bhubaneswar, and in Bhopal. And there are also resource teams that work on new programs for developing new knowledge products, etc. And this is another important point. If you're thinking of, if you're envisioning an NRO, how the current NRO works is, this pool of professionals that I mentioned is fully funded by Ministry of Rural Development through a 100% grant. The NRO, Kudumbashree submits an annual action plan to the ministry, and the grant supports this pool of professionals, while the mentors are supported through the NRLM action plans of the respective state governments that we partner with. Okay, now let us think about how this experience can be used for supporting NULM as a program. From these experiences, and also from Kudumbashree's experience in the urban programs, implementing NULM and PMAY, we feel that these are the 4 areas where an NRO can probably support other states, which are institution building, convergence, livelihood promotion, and gender. In institution building, we understand that there are urban governments where cluster level federations are not yet formed. In those places, forming such cluster level federations can be an activity that could be supported. And where there are federations already in existence, Kudumbashree has this methodology of supporting and developing the subcommittees to take up responsibilities of collectives, and that is an area where NRO can support. And of course, the support to include the most vulnerable. Sharada ma'am spoke about the experience of Kudumbashree. This is an organization where our women always showed an unrelenting passion to include more and more, always go out to reach out to the excluded, more vulnerable person. And this is what led to the identification of the ultra poor and programs that ensure social inclusion. This is an area where NRO can support other states. On in convergence, in convergence, the Kerala already had this urban poverty, what we now call the urban poverty reduction plan, which is basically the CDS action plans in urban local bodies, which are submitted to the urban local governments. and integrated to the local governments. At the national level, learning from the Kudumbashree experience, what we had done is developing this VPRP, for which we have been the national trainer for the last 3 years, which are basically about developing the SHG plans, consolidating them at the local government level, submitting them through the Gram Sabha to the local governments, and of course, local governments in all the places do not have so much money. So whatever could be financed by the local governments are financed by the local governments. Rest of the projects which are proposed in the plan are taken to departmental schemes and also the departments themselves, so that a number of these can be financed and implemented. This is something which is happening in the urban governments of Kerala, and this is an area where Kudumbashree can support the community-based organizations in urban governments. And in livelihood promotion, under SVP we have supported SRLMs to promote more than 120,000 enterprises now across 15 states. The same model, in Kerala we have trained micro-enterprise consultants in urban local governments also. If it is required, we can do this training for other urban governments where we train people from the community in business development over a period of 6 months, which is a very systematic and elaborate training program with practical sessions intermittently placed with classroom sessions. And through this, we can develop, promote enterprises through these people. And also, training of state-level resource groups for sustainability. This we have done in Bihar. The Cafe Kudumbashree model, which Sharda ma'am mentioned here, has been replicated as Didi Ki Rasoi, which is a state government declared program in Bihar for hospital canteens. This is about setting up clean canteens run by women wearing uniforms and head cover, etc., and cooking food in a standardized way and serving to the inpatients, and also selling to others. And then I understand that gender is a priority now. So in Kerala, we have this model of gender resource centers, which is part of a network of social development volunteers at the neighborhood group level, then the vigilant groups at the ward level or the area development society level, then gender resource center at the panchayat level or the CDS level, working with the Snehida help desk at the district level, which is for reporting of women who are facing distress or violence of any kind. And there are different gender programs that Kudumbashree promotes. The most important among them being the gender self-training program, which Sharada ma'am explained here. And how this can be done, the NRO experience so far shows that this model of trained professionals working with community resource persons who are again specially trained for the purpose can work. And if that is the model adopted, then this can be used for institution building, capacity building, resource development, knowledge management, and technical backstopping, as seen in the NRO for NRLM. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am and Sajid sir, for the presentation. Now we are breaking for lunch. I request all of you to back by sharp by 2:30. We need to start the technical sessions by 2:30. So please be back by 2:30. Thank you.